after being stripped of a title for the second time in less than a month. Saul Canelo Alvarez has been reported of the IBF has stripped him of that belt. We know he's already been stripped of the WBC, or should we say elevated to a franchise champion of the WBC to avoid being stripped. Now looks to set his sights on WBO middleweight champion Demetrius "BOOBOO" Andrade. Stay tuned, coming up next.
Hey, this is Cassie, and you're watching Blue Blood Sports TV.
Shout out to Blue Blood Sports TV.
You're watching Blue Blood Sports TV.
Shout outs to Blue Blood Sports TV.
You're watching Blue Blood Sports TV. Hola, habla Cindy, está viendo Deportes TV.
What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So Saul Canelo Alvarez has now been stripped of the IBF belt as him and SERGIY DEREVYANCHENKO couldn't come to an agreement on money, and the IBF stripped him because Saul Canelo Alvarez had to 3 p.m. this afternoon to come up with an agreement and a plan to face SERGIY DEREVYANCHENKO. They couldn't get to an understanding on the money as being reported, so Saul Canelo Alvarez is going to move on from that opponent. Saul Canelo Alvarez has within the last month has been stripped of the WBC and the IBF, right? I know people are going to say, well, he wasn't stripped of the WBC. Well, he was on his way to being stripped of the WBC, and the WBC just didn't want to lose him as a client, so they elevated him to franchise WBC champion in order for him to still represent the WBC sanction body, right? He was on his way as he did not want to face mandatory challenger in Jermall Charlo. Now he couldn't come to an agreement with SERGIY DEREVYANCHENKO for the IBF strap, and now he has been stripped of that belt. Now he's looking to face Demetrius "BOOBOO" Andrade, who's the WBO middleweight champion, undefeated, southpaw, very slick, very brash, you know, outgoing guy. You know, the funny thing about this is Saul Canelo Alvarez had a chance to fight him without being stripped. So now you're going to fight him because Saul Canelo Alvarez still holds the WBA belt. You understand? He held the WBC, he held the WBA, he held the IBF. Demetrius "BOOBOO" Andrade hold the one missing piece to Saul Canelo Alvarez becoming undisputed, and that was the WBO. Saul Canelo Alvarez opted to not take his mandatory and WBC challenger, mandatory challenger, Jermall Charlo. Then he couldn't come to agreement with SERGIY DEREVYANCHENKO, and now he's, you know, has one belt, one legit belt. I know people are gonna say, well, he's WBC super champion, but that's a belt. So he has one legit belt in the form of the WBA belt, and now he's gonna fight Demetrius Andrade for unification when this fight could have been for undisputed. What sense does this make? This makes no sense. What sense does this make? This could have been for undisputed because the WBC would have allowed him to go ahead and fight Demetrius "BOOBOO" Andrade because we know undisputed would trump mandatory. You understand? Unification will trump mandatory. Definitely undisputed would trump mandatory. You understand? The WBC would have been an allowance in favor of Saul Canelo Alvarez to face Demetrius "BOOBOO" Andrade, and it would have been for undisputed. Okay? I don't know the IBF, what the IBF would have done, you know, but we know the WBA obviously would have been on board because they're on board right now, right? So Saul Canelo Alvarez, if he would have just came out originally and said, listen, after my fight, after his last fight, right, with Daniel the Miracle Man Jacobs, where he captured the IBF belt, right, I'm going to go ahead and fight Demetrius Andrade for undisputed, okay? All parties, all sanctioned bodies on board would have been in allowance, right? But he danced around his opponents. He couldn't figure out who he wanted to fight. This fight could have been for undisputed on September 14th, Mexican Independence Day weekend, right? But Saul Canelo Alvarez opted to dance around opponents, trying to cherry pick and choose who he wanted to fight, instead of going straight away and saying, listen, Demetrius Andrade is successful, I want to fight him, and then for undisputed September 14th, then I could go ahead and make the fight with Triple G or whomever you looking to fight, right? It would have been that simple. Then once you become undisputed, Listen, if the IBF, let's say he was to be successful against Demetrius Andrade, I favor Demetrius Andrade in that fight, by the way, but that's for another video. And this fight is official. When this fight is officially made, then I'll make a prediction. But until then, we're just going to speak hypothetically. Now, with that said, right, if Saul Canelo Alvarez was victorious against Demetrius BOOBOO Andrade, right, he could have done whatever he wanted at that point. If he would have said, listen, to the WBC, I'm not fighting Jamal Charlo now, I'm not defending the undisputed, you could go ahead and take the titles, I'm going to go ahead and fight at 168. Now I'm going to pick and choose who I want to do because I already created history. I became the first Mexican middleweight undisputed champion in the history of the sport of boxing. Okay? You would have defeated Danny Jacobs, credible IBF champion, middleweight champion, and you would have successfully defeated undefeated WBO middleweight champion Demetrius Andrade, right? Now you have defeated Gennady Golovkin, Danny Jacobs, and Demetrius BOOBOO Andrade. That's credible. So now if you turn around and you say, listen, I'm not going to defend these titles against Jamal Charlo, I'm going to go ahead and look to move up in weight and possibly get a fight at 175 and, you know, become a 4-division world champion and beat SERGIY Kovalev and things of that nature, it would have been accepted because you already accomplished the feat of becoming undisputed. You beat Danny Jacobs and Demetrius Andrade, a slick southpaw and a big orthodox middleweight, right? Credit. You have to give him credit for that, right? And then you go and look to fight SERGIY Kovalev, you get all the credit in the world, okay? You not fighting Jamal Charlo at that point in time, it's still not going to be accepted. Everybody's still going to say you ducked Jamal Charlo, but still, guess what? At the end of the day, people would have had to just deal with it, right? Because it would have looked like, well, he fought Demetrius Andrade, right? Who people thought he was perceived as he was ducking. He fought Danny Jacobs, was a huge middleweight, right? He beat Triple G, who at one point people thought he was ducking Triple G. He fought Triple G twice. You understand? The Zone would have been on board because it would have been an undisputed bout, and he would have been going chasing history to become the first Mexican undisputed middleweight. So now you have the first Mexican unified heavyweight in the history of sport of boxing. Then in the same calendar year, you would have had the first Mexican undisputed middleweight, right? So the Zone would have been on board to sell it. And I'm pretty sure, you know, Andy Ruiz would have been on board and he would have been part of the build-up and things of that nature. And it would have sold and you would have created history and the Zone would have been on board. So all parties involved would have been on board. All the sanction bodies would have been on board due to the fact that it would have been creating history, not just undisputed, but it would have been the first Mexican to do it. And all sanction bodies would have wanted to be part of that. They would not have wanted to be the sanction body that prevented it. So all parties would have been on board if he would have just came out from the beginning and announced that I'm going to fight Demetrius BOOBOO Andrade. Now you get stripped of 2 titles because even if he wins against Andrade, he still will only be a 2-belt holder because it doesn't count with the WBC. So why did you go through all of this? It makes no sense to go this route anyway. To end up going the same route anyway. Sergey Derevyachenko, Jamal Charlo would not have come into play at this point in time if he would have just said, listen, and he initially said this. He initially said that he wanted to go ahead and fight. He didn't want to fight Triple G because he wanted to become undisputed. That was his initial thoughts and comments, right? And so now you had the opportunity to do so, and you let it fall by the wayside, and you're still going to fight Demetrius Andrade. So what sense does this make? It makes no sense at all. None. Because now it's going to be for unification for him to have 2 belts. So he went from having 3, and let's say he wins against Demetrius Andrade. He's victorious against Demetrius. So now you're going to go the route of fighting Demetrius Andrade anyway. So let's say he is victorious, right? Let's say he is victorious. Now he went from a 3-belt holder to only holding 2 belts and having the WBO and the WBA. Now tell me, what sense does that make? So now he's going to allow, it looks like they're going to have, they're going to sanction Sergey Derevyachenko versus Gennady Triple G Golovkin for the vacant IBF belt. So that means he will have to go through the winner of that fight to gain a belt that he already had to go to the route of becoming undisputed. So this further lets me know that Saul Canelo Alvarez is not chasing undisputed. Point blank and period. And Demetrius Andrade had been already on board and saying that he would love to fight Canelo Alvarez next, should he be victorious in his last fight. And he was victorious against SERGIY. And now we back at square one. But now Demetrius Andrade is not fighting for undisputed. So this is also not fair to Demetrius Andrade, because now Demetrius Andrade also too is not fighting for undisputed. Wow. But that's all I got for y'all, man. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notification. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shouts out to the entire LDBC. Shouts out to New Media. Shouts out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. Saul Canelo Alvarez and Demetrius BOOBOO Andrade are in talks to stage a unification showdown. So I got for y'all. Peace.